In this video, I am going to talk about the flat map operator for Rxjava, and specifically, I'm going to be talking about Android. Obviously, I do Android videos. You probably know that. So I'm going to be following along with one of the lectures on my course on my website, which is the Rx Android and Rxjava course for beginners. This lecture is called Transformation Operators Flat Map. So it's a flat map operator. You can get it from the side list over here just by clicking right here. So now what is a flat map operator? A flat map operator it's pretty famous, I guess, in terms of Rx operators. It's very useful. It can be very useful, but it's also one of the more complicated operators. I definitely don't think it's a easy one to learn compared to the other ones, and it's for a number of reasons. I think mostly because it if you're going to use the flat map operator, you kind of have to know how to use a lot of other operators too. And it's kind of like when you use a flat map operator, you're going to be using a bunch of other operators too in conjunction with it. So you kind of got to really know your stuff. You got to be careful which threads you're doing work on, which threads you're posting to, all kinds of stuff. So hopefully in this video, I'm going to shed some light on this operator and make it a little less confusing for you and show you a practical example of when you would want to use this operator. So just as kind of a heads up before I get into talking about the examples, I don't want you to waste any of your time if this lecture is going to be too difficult for you or you're not going to find it helpful. So ahead of time, I want to tell you that for this example, I expect you to know how to use retrofit. I expect you to at least gone through some of the lectures on my Rxjava course, because I'm going to be using the from iterable operator. I'm going to be creating observables, subscribing observers. I would call it an advanced Rxjava or Rx Android lecture. So having some knowledge on the other lectures in this course are going to help you. If you're just watching this for the first time and you don't know anything about Rxjava or Rx Android, you're probably going to struggle and you're going to have a bad time, and especially if you don't know how to use retrofit. So if you don't know how to use retrofit, I have a blog post on my website, Android retrofit getting started. There's the URL right there. That's going to show you how to get started with retrofit, which is a web service framework library for making web requests, HTTP requests on Android, how to make it easier. So yeah, let's get started. So first I'll just read the definition here. So a flat map operator, its job is to transform the items, so in other words, objects, emitted by an observable into observables. Then it can flatten the emissions from those into a single observable. Then I have a little kind of side note here that says, if you are familiar with live data, aka or specifically mediator live data, this kind of does something similar. So if you've worked with live data, you've worked with mediator live data. If you're a member on my website, obviously you've seen me do these things in my courses because I love live data. I love MVVM, the architecture MVVM. So if you've watched those, you know what those are. And so this does something similar. You can add multiple sources of live data into a mediator, which is called mediator live data. And you can remove the sources, add the sources, do things to them, basically flatten them, just kind of like a flat map operator does. But a flat map operator can do a few other things that mediator live data can't, only because it has access to the other Rx operators, which you're going to see in the example here. So the next point I have here coming down is that order is not maintained. So if you've watched my other lectures in this course, you know that a lot of the other operators, they maintain order when they emit objects. So if you put a list of objects into an operator, that list of objects emits those objects or the observables in the exact same order that it received them in. But with a flat map, that's not the case. If you give it a list of objects, it doesn't necessarily emit those objects in the same order. So what it does is it takes them all in, it does its thing, does its flat map thing. It can have multiple sources, and then it will just emit those objects randomly, basically. I don't know what the background process is behind the operation itself, but it just takes them all in and then does something and emits them in a random order. And I know it's random because if you do the same operation multiple times, like if you do it 100 times, you'll get a different order. You'll consistently get a random order. So there's no like real pattern behind it. I'm not really sure. All right, so we're gonna come down a little further here. So it's just talking more about the flat map operator, what it does. Order is not preserved, which I just described. And now we come down to the example. So in this example, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build just a small application that accesses a REST API on the internet using retrofit, obviously, as I just said. And it's going to make two different requests, two different GET requests. The first GET request is to retrieve a list of posts. So I'm going to be using this JSON placeholder website. You can see that this kind of link right here takes me to a list of dummy posts. So it's just a list of 100 posts with different IDs, different titles, and different bodies. So step one, I'll be querying those posts. We can do that with a single query. I can get all of these posts. But then they have another part of the API here. So if I click on posts and then reference a specific post ID and then get the comments, I can do /comments. And this will then give me a list of 500 random comments for that particular post. So I can scroll down here and you can see that goes to 500 there. So each post will have 500 comments. So this is post number 1. You can tell by the ID. If I was to change that to 2, that would take me to post number 2's comments, and that would go up all the way to post number 100. So there's 100 posts, obviously, and each one has 100 or 500 random comments. So what is this application going to do? Well, I'm going to bring it up on the screen here. I'm going to close it and reopen it. And so what I want you to pay attention to here when I open it is it's going to retrieve the posts all at once. So you'll see right away the recycler view will show the list of posts. But if you look at the progress bars, which you'll know what I'm talking about in just a second here, it's going to retrieve the number of comments for each post in no particular order. So what's happening here is I'm using the flat map operator to create 100 different observable sources for each of the requests to retrieve the comments. There's 100 posts, so there's going to be 100 observable sources. So if I open the app, there's the posts that get retrieved right away, and then you see the number of comments being retrieved kind of gradually as the flat map operator does its thing. So kind of one of the key things to notice there is when I opened it, they were retrieved in a random order. So watch the progress bars, the number of comments is being retrieved in a random order. So if I go back to the lecture, I have a GIF on the lecture itself showing kind of what's happening there. It's the same kind of thing. So yeah, what do we got here as we come down? Getting into the example. I think I talked about all that. Yeah, so we're getting into the example now. So once again, if you don't know how to use retrofit, you will probably struggle with this tutorial. So definitely read this blog post if you don't know how to use retrofit. And I'm going to be trying to focus on just the flat map operator and the Rx stuff itself. I don't want to spend much time on setting up the recycle view, building the layouts, setting up retrofit, all that stuff. I'm going to go through it, but I'm not going to type it out on video or do any of that because this video is specifically for retrofit and the flat map operator. So I don't want to waste anybody's time who just came for that particular piece of knowledge. Okay, so this is the kind of the starting point code right here that I have in front of me. If I'll bring this back up, this code is all going to be available on my GitHub too. By the way, there'll be a link in the lecture and there'll also be a link in the description of this video. Let me just see if I can find that's the repository right here. So it's Rxjava Flatmap example. That's going to be the code. And you want to go to the master branch for the endpoint code or the start branch for the starting point code. The code that I have in Android Studio right now is going to be the starting point code. So if you want to follow along with me, you can get the starting point. Or if you just want all of the code, you can get the master branch. Yeah, so let's get started here. Okay, so to start off, we're going to take a look at the build.gradle file. I have a whole bunch of dependencies in here. Retrofit, obviously, there's the two retrofit ones. JSON converter for converting Java objects to JSON objects. Rxjava, this is one you don't know of. I'm going to come back to that. Rx Android, and then the recycler view dependency. So this is one that you probably haven't seen before. This is the retrofit call adapter dependency. So what this is going to do is it will convert retrofit call objects. So that's the default object that retrofit returns from its requests, and it will convert it into either observables, different types of observables basically. And that's what you see. I'll show the service generator class here. If we open the service generator class, this is where I have my retrofit builder, the retrofit instance, basically where I create the retrofit instance. Again, if you don't know about retrofit and you don't know about my courses and how I generally use retrofit, this class is going to be very confusing looking for you. So I suggest reading that post on retrofit and ideally probably watching my MVVM course, but you might not do that. So anyway, so this is to create that retrofit instance. What that dependency does is it allows me to pass this Rxjava 2 call adapter factory. And what that does, like I just explained, is it will allow me to in the API class where I return I can return observables from the retrofit requests. So notice I'm returning an observable with the get posts method, and I'm returning an observable from the get comments method. The get comments method takes an ID as input, obviously, because it references a specific ID. So those are the two retrofit classes anyway. You have the service generator and you have the request API. And so now coming up, we have the models package. The models package models the data. Obviously, you have comments, which have post ID, ID, name, email, body. If we take a look at the, let's see, the placeholder API, the comments have post ID, has ID, has name, email, and body. Then the posts have user ID, ID, title, and body. So if we go back to the example, and I look at the post object, you see that there's that user ID, ID, title, body. So those are the two data models. Those are the two retrofit setup classes that I have. You saw the dependencies. Now let's go into the layouts, I guess. So activity main is very simple, just a recycler view, nothing special there. And then layout post list item is the list item layout for those individual list items. So all there is in here is a text view for this title and a text view that's going to display the number of comments. Pretty straightforward. Nothing really too special here. So I'm going to close all these classes, and next one is the recycler view adapter. So once again, nothing special here. Just creating that view holder. We got a couple methods in here: update post, set posts. This is for setting the posts, so setting the entire list of posts. And then later, when we retrieve the number of comments that each individual post has, I'll be calling the update post method to update that post. And then there's just a view holder here. Got some a little bit of logic in here for either displaying that progress bar if the comments haven't been retrieved yet, or hiding the progress bar if the comments have been retrieved. So again, nothing crazy here, just kind of some pretty basic stuff. So that's all the setup that I'm going to talk about. If you're confused about anything that I just said, leave a comment below and I can point you to a resource where you can get more information, because like I said, this isn't a beginner video by any means. I definitely expect you to have watched at least a few other of the RX lectures or read through them, and definitely know how to use retrofit. So yeah, so now we're going to get started in main activity, and we're going to get started with the flatmap operator. We're going to actually start working with the flatmap operator. All right, so step one is going to be building a method for retrieving those posts. So I'm going to call the method, it's going to return an observable of type post. I'm going to call it get posts observable. And I'm going to go return the service generator class, so service generator, and do get request API to get access to my retrofit instance and my API class, and then do get posts. So I'm just calling the get posts method, which doesn't take any input. I'm going to subscribe on a thread, so the schedulers.io thread, because we need to do work on the background thread. I want to observe the results on the main thread, so Android schedulers.main thread. And then I want to, this is going to be the first example of using the flatmap operator, because what I want to do here is the get posts returns a list of post objects. But what I want to do is I want to return an observable of post type that can emit multiple posts. So basically I'm taking a list and I want to be able to convert it to an observable object that can emit the posts. So I'm doing .flatmap, new function, letting the autocomplete do the work for me. And now I'm going to fill in the question mark here. So the observable source type that I want to return is a post type. I'm going to also put that in the question mark here. And that's going to be it. I'm going to add a semicolon there. So now what do I write in here? So what this is going to do is it'll execute my retrofit query. It will retrieve that list of posts, which will then be available right here. So now how do I take that list of post objects and convert it into observables? Well, I can use the iterable, the from iterable operator. And you should be familiar with that. I've gone over that in one of my other lectures. So I can write from iterable, pass those posts objects, and then do .subscribe on, and I want to subscribe on the background thread. So I want to do the work on the background thread. And also now, before we move forward, I want to set the posts to the recycler view. So I can write adapter.set posts here and then pass that list of posts. Since the posts are going to be available right away, we might as well just set them to the recycler view, which is what you see happening in the demo application. So if I launch the demo application, the posts are set right away, and then the comments kind of trickle in later on. So setting those posts right away is what this line of code is going to do right here. So now I have a method to retrieve the posts. Now I'm gonna call that method in the onCreate method. So I'm coming up into onCreate. I'm gonna call getPostsObservable. I want to subscribe on the background thread, so schedulers.io. And now I want to use the flatmap operator for the second time. And this is where I'm going to be creating those multiple observable sources for getting the comments. So I'm going to write flatmap, new function, and what this is going to return, so the data type, the observable source that I want to put here is still going to be post, because I'm still returning post objects even though I am getting the comments. Let me just open up the post class right here. So the post class contains a list of comments. The thing is that you can't get that list of comments from the post URL. So if I open up the placeholder API, the comments aren't contained in this post URL. They're only contained in the comments URL. So I have to make a separate request and then set those comments. So that's why I'm still returning a post object, but it's going to be a post object that's been updated. It's going to be a post object that now contains those comments. So this method is going to be, it's going to have to return an updated observable post with comments. That's what this is going to do. This is going to be where we make those observables. So next I have to build that method, of course, but before we do that, I want to kind of continue on with what we're doing in onCreate here. So I want to observe this on the main thread, and then I want to call subscribe. So subscribe. That was weird, my Android Studio froze there. Anyway, so .subscribe, and then I want to create a new observer. It's going to be a post object. In the onSubscribe method, I want to add the disposable to my list of disposables. So just disposable.add. The on error, I can just print an error message. So log E, and I'm just going to print that throwable. In the onComplete method, you can write something. I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it blank. Then add a semicolon down at the bottom. So now in this onNext method, basically what I want to do is I want to update the post in the list. So the post that's passed to this onNext method will have the comments, basically. So once we have the comments, then I can send it to the post list and hide the progress bar and do all that stuff. So there's two things I still need to do. Number one is I want to create a method that returns an updated observable post object, and I want to build a method that then updates the list in the recycler view. The first one I'm going to build is to get the comments. So I'm going to come down here, create another private method that returns an observable object. Once again, it's going to return a post object, just like the other method did. This one's going to be called getCommentsObservable. It's going to take a post object as input, so final post. And inside here, I want to return the service generator. So our service generator, access the request API, and then do .get comments, and I want to pass that particular post ID. So post.getID. Now I want to use the map operator. So .map, pass a new function, and I want to perform a check. So what I'm checking, or sorry, I want to add a delay. So the point of this, adding this delay, this thread delay, is it's going to help me simulate a network request. So different times that it would take to make different network requests. That's how I'm able to actually make them come in at different times. So they don't all come in at the same time, because the threads that these are executing on are going to sleep for random amounts of times. That's how I'm able to simulate this. So I'm going to create an object named delay. I'm going to set it equal to a new random. Whoops, not there. New random, and it's new random dot next int. I need to go outside that bracket. Next int. I want a random integer from 0 to 5, but I'm going to do +1 so that it doesn't ever get 0. So it's going to be a random integer from 1 to 6, and I want to multiply that by 1,000. So this is going to represent the time in milliseconds that I want to sleep the thread. So it's going to be a random number from 1 to 6 and multiplied by 1,000. So it's going to sleep the thread from 1,000 milliseconds to 6,000 milliseconds, and it's going to be a random number. So then thread.sleep, pass that delay, and then I can do, log sleeping thread. I can print out the thread name so you can see it in the log. So current thread, I'll close this so we have more space. Current thread dot get name, and then sleeping the thread for some amount of time. That's going to be, I'm going to go to the next line, for string dot value of, and I can pass that delay and then just say milliseconds. So I'm sleeping the thread for some amount of milliseconds. Next, I want to do posts, or post dot set the comments and set the comments that are retrieved, and then I want to return that post object. So it's making the query. It's then mapping that list of comments to a post object and sleeping the thread, setting the comments, returning the post. Now the last step is to subscribe on the schedulers thread, which is the background thread, because we are doing a network operation, so it needs to be done on a background thread. So now I'm going to scroll up here and go into where I returned null before, and I want to return that get comments observable and pass that post object. So now that's going to create 100 different observable sources through this method, and return the comments for each individual post at different rates, because we're sleeping the thread at different times. And so that's generally what that's kind of the end of the example for the flat map operator. Basically, I'm using it for two different ways. I'm using it to map a list of objects into an observable source of those objects, which then can be emitted individually, and we're using it to flatten a whole bunch of observable sources into a single observable source, which is what you see right here. And this is going to be pretty straightforward. Almost, all the heavy lifting is done. I'm just going to write private void update post. It'll take a post object as input, and then I'll write adapter.update post and pass that post object. And that's all we need to do. Now I'm just going to call this method right here, update post, pass the post, and I can run it, and we can take a look and see if it's yielding the behavior that we expect. So there's the app launching, and right away you see that the posts are retrieved, and then you see the comments kind of coming in at a seemingly random order. So basically the takeaway here is that it is working as we expect. So kind of to summarize things, I know that the flat map operator it's a complicated one. It's a hard one to kind of grasp, but I don't think because of the operator itself. It's more because there's usually so many things that you use in conjunction with the operator. Like we use the map operator, we used the from iterable operator. Can't remember where, but we definitely used it somewhere. We subscribed to different threads, observed from different threads, updated a recycler view. And it's just, there's a lot of stuff. And this is a fairly simple example. If you can imagine yourself having a lot of different sources, like we really had two sources. There's 100 different comment sources that we used, but there was the same one over and over again. If you could imagine an app that has, 20 different actual sources from different URLs, this could get very complicated very quickly. And that's one of the reasons why I prefer live data personally, but definitely the flatmap operator has its place in the Android development world, especially because it can be used with all of the other operators in Rxjava, all like I used map and from iterable and all of those different operators. That's definitely what I think is the most powerful thing about it, is you have access to all of these different operators for different things. So anyway, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully it helped. If you have comments or you're confused about anything, leave questions down below and I'll try and answer them. In the next video, what I'm going to do is work on the concat operator, which basically solves a problem that the flatmap operator has. The flatmap operator, as you know, emits things at a random order. The concat operator will maintain that order. So that's what we're going to look at in the next video.